As the sun dipped below the majestic peaks of Redwood Summit, Ethan Carter found himself drawn once again to the private hot spring tucked behind towering cedar trees, the warmth of the hidden pool calling to him. The air was crisp with the lingering memory of daytime heat, still clinging to the bark of the ancient forest, and overhead the sky had turned from pale gold to a tapestry of rose and indigo, as though night herself were weaving a regal cloak for the land. Ethan was 33 years old, a man who prided himself on having mastered the art of quiet living. He had moved to Redwood Summit a few months prior, lured by the promise of peaceful seclusion and the luxury of exclusive hot springs accessible only to residents. His work as a remote software developer was lucrative. He owned a sleek townhouse furnished with the best that modern technology could offer. But beyond the glitz and glass, it was the allure of natural serenity that had truly captured his heart. He had spent too long in the neon-lit chaos of city life, craving a place where he could hear his own thoughts. This evening, as he passed through the narrow path flanked by ferns and small wildflowers, he could already sense the steam rising ahead. The hot spring lay in a hidden clearing, cradled by rocks textured by eons of natural erosion. He pushed aside a curtain of low-hanging branches, stepping into the clearing with a soft crunch of gravel underfoot. He shrugged off his jacket, letting the cool breeze kiss his skin, and then carefully lowered himself into the steaming water. Relief spread through his muscles almost instantly, and he closed his eyes, immersing in the quiet hush. Yet that hush was soon broken. When he opened his eyes again, something flickered at the edge of his vision, a reflection in the water. Ethan jerked his head up, surprise jolting him from his peaceful reverie. There, on the opposite side of the spring, stood a figure. At first, he thought it might be another resident, a visitor who had slipped in to share the waters. But when the figure stepped forward, the last scraps of daylight revealed her in full, startling detail. Her skin was a deep violet hue that seemed to shimmer in the dwindling sunlight, as if tiny stars were embedded within her flesh. Her eyes glowed, luminous and intense like captive starlight, and her hair, white as freshly fallen snow, spilled over her shoulders in damp, silken waves. She was taller than most women he'd seen, tall enough to match his own 6 feet, or perhaps even surpass it by a fraction. She wore a thin robe of an unfamiliar fabric that clung to her strange, mesmerizing form. For a heartbeat, they merely stared at each other, neither quite believing what they saw. Ethan's mind raced, his heart thumping a rapid tattoo in his chest. Before he could muster a single word, the woman gasped, scrambling backward so abruptly that she nearly slipped on the mossy rocks. Her wide, glowing eyes showed more than fear. They showed a kind of astonished recognition, as though seeing Ethan here was not just unexpected, but profoundly significant. "Human," she whispered in a trembling voice that seemed to ring with distant chimes. You were not supposed to see me like this." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat suddenly parched. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize anyone else would be here," he managed, his voice thick with confusion. "And are you okay? Did you hurt yourself?" She steadied herself with both hands on a jagged boulder, her posture tense as though poised to flee. "I cannot believe this is happening," she whispered again, more to herself than to him. I had my cloak, my disguise. I was certain this place would be empty." "Your cloak?" Ethan echoed, eyebrows knitting together. I don't understand." She took a deep breath, her violet skin shimmering even under the faint starlight that had begun to emerge. Then, all at once, her posture wilted, and she looked at him with an expression that could only be described as resigned dread. "I am Zyra," she said softly, "and I am not of this earth." Ethan's breath caught in his lungs. He blinked, sure he must be dreaming or hallucinating. But there was no waking from this. She was standing right there, as real and tangible as the rock beneath her feet, her strange radiance dancing across the water's surface. He began to tremble, equal parts fear and awe, as 100 questions battled for his tongue. "Wait," he said, voice shaking. "What do you mean, not of this earth?" Zyra closed her luminescent eyes for a moment, steeling herself. "My people call themselves the Valtyra," she said. "We come from a world far beyond your solar system. Our technology allows us to travel unseen, to live among humans undetected for brief periods. But I fear I have exposed myself tonight." "Exposed yourself?" Ethan repeated, swallowing another lump in his throat. Why are you here? She turned her gaze towards the sky, as though searching for answers among the shimmering stars. I am, a princess among my people, she admitted, her voice laced with regret. But I have renounced my throne, at least for now. I fled to this planet to escape certain responsibilities I was not prepared to face. Questions crowded Ethan's mind, each one more urgent than the last. Why Redwood Summit? How had she traveled here? What danger did this pose to him? But as he studied her trembling form, he realized something else. Behind her alien features, behind the shimmering skin and glowing eyes, there was fear, a very human kind of fear. Why are you so afraid? He asked, gently wading closer through the steaming water, though he kept a respectful distance. I'm not going to hurt you. She regarded him with wide, uncertain eyes. No, she said, voice quiet, but my people might. There is a law among the Valtyra. Should any human witness our true form, that human must be eliminated, unless the Valtyra in question agrees to bind their essence with that human in an unbreakable soul bond. For a moment, Ethan was sure he'd misheard. Eliminated? He echoed, disbelieving. Soul bond? I don't understand. Zyra's shoulders trembled. If I do not accept the bond with you, my people will come for you. They will come for you and destroy all traces of your knowledge. I cannot allow that. But I also cannot force you into a bond you do not want. Ethan's breathing came in shallow gasps. He felt his world tilt on its axis, as though Redwood Summit's peaceful night had suddenly become the stage for a cosmic drama he never asked to star in. Bond. But that's insane. What does that even mean? She looked at him with something akin to sorrow. It means that our minds, our spirits, become forever linked. I will sense you, you will sense me. We will share emotions, sometimes even fragments of thought, if the bond deepens. It cannot be undone without terrible consequences for us both. For a long while, Ethan simply stared at her. The steam curled around them, carrying the scent of minerals that drifted into the cold night air. He felt as though he were on the precipice of a chasm, staring down into an unimaginable void. I need a moment, he whispered finally. Zyra nodded, looking more defeated with each passing second. Of course you do, she said. I am sorry, Ethan Carter. I never meant for this to happen. How do you know my name? The question burst from him before he could stop it. A faint, sad smile curved her lips. I have observed you, she said, when your presence here overlapped with my visits. Your kind eyes, your calm spirit. You never seemed inclined to judge what you did not understand. I was comforted by your aura. Perhaps that is why I dared to come tonight without double-checking the schedules. The revelation stunned him. She had been watching him, an alien princess, traveling across galaxies for reasons she had yet to fully explain. And now, because of one chance encounter, they were both hurtling toward a fate that neither had asked for. Ethan let out a long, unsteady breath. So if I refuse, I die? Zyra's voice was soft as the night breeze. I am afraid so. The weight of that statement pressed on him, hot as the water around his body. Memories flashed through his mind. The comfortable townhouse he had worked so hard to purchase, the dream of a quiet life spent in Redwood Summit, the soft laughter of old friends he called too rarely. Every piece of normalcy he had known was suddenly jeopardized by an alien law. Yet looking at Zyra, seeing the guilt and terror in her glowing eyes, he felt a pull of empathy. She was more than a threat. She was also a woman who had found herself in an impossible situation, exiled from her own world, and now forced to navigate the intricacies of an ancient mandate. He cleared his throat. If we do this bond, what happens then? Will your people come for me anyway? She shook her head, her hair shimmering like moonlight. No, she said. They will be bound by their own law to honor it. You will become a Valtyra by extension, a consort of sorts. It will grant you certain protections, but it will also draw you into our politics, our conflicts, and our entire way of life. The entire galaxy, it might seem, will open up to you, and that is no small burden. His mind reeled. A day ago, his biggest worry had been debugging lines of code. Now, he stood at the gateway to an interstellar alliance he never knew existed. The sheer enormity of it all threatened to crush him, and yet he saw no real choice. He swallowed, his voice trembling. I don't want to die, he said, almost apologetically. Zyra nodded. I know, she whispered, and I do not want you to, either. They sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, each lost in their own turbulent sea of thoughts. Finally, Ethan managed a nod, as though that simple gesture might anchor him to reality. Then, I accept, he said. I accept the soul bond. Her eyes searched his, shining with relief and sorrow all at once. It is done, she whispered. We will seal it with a vow under the night sky. Ethan felt a jolt, like an electric current passing through his veins. Instinctively, he moved closer to her, the steaming water swirling around their bodies. Zyra raised a trembling hand, reaching across the narrow divide until her palm rested against his chest, just above his pounding heart. He pressed his own hand over hers, feeling the coolness of her violet skin against his own. She uttered words in a language Ethan had never heard, a melodious, ancient cadence that echoed through the clearing. Then, in English, she spoke with quiet determination. By the laws of Valtyra, by the cosmic threads that bind all living souls, I forge a bond between this human, Ethan Carter, and myself, Zyra, of the royal line of Lemiris. Let our spirits share the path ahead. Let our hearts resonate in unison. Ethan swallowed, feeling a wave of something indescribable wash over him, a warmth that wasn't just physical. It seeped into his mind, into his very bones, as though some unseen force was weaving its way through him. He wasn't entirely certain if he was supposed to speak as well, but as the sensation intensified, he found himself whispering, I accept this bond. I won't break it. A moment later, the air seemed to shimmer. Ethan gasped as a pulse of energy rippled through his consciousness, leaving him dizzy and elated all at once. When the effect subsided, he found himself shaking, his vision a bit blurred. Zyra slowly withdrew her hand, her breath coming in ragged bursts. It is done, she said, voice trembling. The bond, it exists now. Ethan stared at her, struggling to process what he was feeling. It was as though a subtle thread had been woven through his soul, tethering him to another living being. He could sense her presence, faint yet undeniably there. Emotions not entirely his own flickered at the edge of his awareness. Fear, regret, and a surprising tenderness that he couldn't quite name. Are you okay? He asked at length, voice hushed. Zyra nodded, though her expression was a swirl of relief and sorrow. I am stable, she said, but everything has changed. The path ahead, it will be complicated. Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure he entirely believed the words coming out of his mouth. But at least, we're both alive, he said, half in reassurance to himself. Zyra breathed out a small, shaky laugh. Yes, she said, alive and bound for life. With those words, the silence returned. The waters of the hot spring lapped softly around them, and the stars overhead seemed to gleam with a newfound intensity, as though acknowledging this strange new union. In that moment, Ethan Carter's old life slipped away like a shadow at dusk. He was no longer just a man seeking solitude in a quiet retreat. He was tethered to an alien princess, and the galaxies beyond Earth's horizon had just become very real. Neither of them spoke again for a long time. They merely lingered in that gently roiling water, each grappling with the reality they now shared. Under the vast canopy of night, fate had spun them together, and neither could deny that the world, no, the universe, had become a far more mysterious place than it had been just an hour before. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself in a haze of disbelief and cautious wonder. The bond with Zyra was an ever-present whisper in the back of his mind. At times, he felt as though he could sense her mood from miles away, an unspoken awareness that sharpened whenever they were close. Whether he worked on his laptop at home or took a brisk walk through Redwood Summit's winding trails, he felt the gentle pulse of her essence. It was not intrusive, just a faint echo that comforted him even when he was alone. For her part, Zyra attempted to resume her routine of hiding under a human disguise, appearing as a tall, pale-skinned woman with unremarkable features when out in public. She wore wide-brimmed hats, sunglasses, and carefully selected attire to blend in, and most townspeople paid her little mind. People in Redwood Summit were used to occasional eccentric visitors, drawn by the area's scenic beauty and famous hot springs. However, beneath the facade, a current of urgency thrummed. Zyra warned Ethan that it was only a matter of time before the Voltran High Council sensed the bond. Such a union, she explained, would be impossible to hide indefinitely. Her people possessed technology and mystical practices that could detect these cosmic links from afar, especially when they involved royalty. "They will come for me," she confided one afternoon, her eyes clouded with worry. "If they have not already sent envoys, they soon will. There is no law against the bond itself once it's formed, but they will demand an audience, and they may attempt to separate us if they sense any impropriety." Ethan listened, heart pounding. The idea of being pulled into a grand alien conflict was surreal, yet the bond in his mind pulsed with truth. He could feel Zyra's anxious energy, and it only fueled his own. "Then we'll face them together," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I won't let anyone harm you." A shadow of a smile crossed her lips. "Brave words," she replied softly, "but do not underestimate them. My family holds considerable power, and so does the council. They will test you, scrutinize you, and they will not be gentle about it. The future of our entire realm may hinge upon how they judge this union." He swallowed, pondering what she meant by realm. How vast was her empire? How complex were these alien politics that now extended their tendrils into his quiet mountain life? Still, Ethan found solace in the simple truth that he and Zyra were bound. He could not abandon her, nor did he want to. Unfathomable as it was, he sensed in her a kindred spirit, someone who had fled responsibility, just as he had once fled the suffocating corporate ladder to find a simpler life. Gradually, Zyra moved into Ethan's townhouse. Their bond felt too exposed if they were apart, and any stray emotion could alert Voltran sensors more easily when they were separated. Though Redwood Summit was not teeming with Valtyra, the possibility of covert watchers couldn't be ruled out. At first, cohabitation was awkward. Zyra was unaccustomed to Earth's kitchen appliances and entertainment systems. She found microwave ovens fascinating and terrifying, staring at them as if they might spontaneously combust. Ethan tried to teach her the basics: how to make coffee, how to browse the internet without raising suspicion, and how to dress in casual Earth clothing without drawing stares. She was a quick learner, albeit baffled by humanity's obsession with social media and celebrity news. But beyond these domestic trivialities, a deeper connection bloomed. Each evening, they would talk, truly talk. Ethan learned that Zyra's homeworld orbited a star she called Saryan, a brilliant sun in a constellation invisible from Earth's vantage. She spoke of towering crystal spires, floating cities powered by advanced gravitational fields, and lush forests with bioluminescent blooms that danced in the starlight. He learned, too, of the political entanglements that drove her to flee. As princess and heir to the High Council seat, Zyra was expected to marry a powerful noble from another star system, forging an alliance that would strengthen Voltran influence. Yet her heart yearned for something more than a convenient arrangement. She sought freedom, a chance to forge her own path. When she discovered Redwood Summit during a secret excursion to Earth, she felt drawn to its quiet beauty, the calm that radiated from its ancient woods and pristine hot springs. She had hidden there for weeks, disguised as a human tourist, until fate forced her to reveal her true self to Ethan. Bit by bit, Ethan's fear of the unknown receded, replaced by wonder at the galaxy he never knew existed. Yet, reality soon intruded. One night, while they lounged in the living room, the overhead lights flickered ominously. A cold chill swept through the townhouse. Ethan felt it like an electric jolt, and so did Zyra. He could sense her alarm through their bond even before she spoke. "They are here," she whispered, her voice tight. "Who?" he asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. Almost on cue, a swirling distortion formed in the center of the room. It reminded Ethan of heat ripples in the air, except these were shot through with glimmers of violet and silver. With a sharp crack, two figures stepped out of the distortion, clad in sleek, form-fitting garments that shimmered under the artificial light. They both had skin in varying shades of violet, though lighter than Zyra's, and wore metallic armbands etched with alien symbols. Zyra of Lamiris. One spoke in a resonant voice, deep and imposing. "We have come by order of the council. You have violated the edicts by forging a soul bond with a human. Surrender yourself at once." Ethan's heart hammered. He rose from the couch, placing himself between the intruders and Zyra. He felt an odd surge of courage, whether it was his own or borrowed from the bond. He couldn't say. "She's done nothing wrong," he insisted, voice trembling but determined. "The bond is allowed by your laws, isn't it?" The second intruder, a woman with pale violet skin and cold, glittering eyes, sneered at him. "It is permitted only under dire circumstances," she said, "and only if recognized by the council. We must verify whether this bond was formed willingly or under coercion." Zyra stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Ethan's shoulder. She spoke in Voltaren, a series of liquid syllables Ethan couldn't understand, but whose meaning reverberated faintly in his mind through their bond. She declared the bond voluntary, and that she would not submit to intimidation. The male envoy's gaze swept over Ethan with distaste. "Then come with us," he said, adjusting a device on his wrist. "You and your human consort must present yourselves to the council. If you refuse, we have authority to take stronger measures." Ethan's pulse skyrocketed, and he felt Zyra's internal conflict through the bond, her fear, her defiance, her resignation. "We will go," she finally said, voice quavering. "We have no choice, Ethan." With that, the female envoy produced a small orb from her belt. It expanded into a swirling portal, larger and more stable than the distortion they had arrived through. Wind whipped through the living room, scattering papers and rattling pictures on the walls. "Step through," commanded the male. "Now." Ethan looked at Zyra, eyes filled with uncertainty. She gave his hand a reassuring squeeze, her violet skin shifting to a more vibrant hue. "Trust me," she whispered. "I will not let any harm befall you." Together, hand in hand, they stepped through the portal. A moment of vertigo seized Ethan, and then he found himself in a grand hall of glittering white stone and crystal arches. Ethereal light suffused the space, pouring in from windows set high in the walls. Beyond those windows, Ethan caught glimpses of a sky ablaze with unfamiliar stars and the faint glow of a lavender moon. They stood in the center of an ornate chamber, its floor inlaid with swirling patterns of iridescent tiles that formed shapes reminiscent of fractal galaxies. Rows of tall, stately figures in flowing robes lined the sides, many sporting complex hairstyles and ornate jewelry. Their skin ranged from pale lilac to deep amethyst, their eyes shining like gemstones. At the far end of the hall stood a raised dais, upon which perched a semicircle of imposing chairs, each occupied by an elder Voltaren. The central chair, carved from a single piece of translucent crystal, held a regal figure, an older female Voltaren whose skin bore a faint, regal shimmer of silver undertones. Her eyes narrowed as Ethan and Zyra approached. "The council convenes," announced a voice from behind. "The matter at hand, Princess Zyra of the Lemiris line, having unlawfully concealed herself on Earth and formed a soul bond with a human." Zyra stepped forward and bowed her head, her posture respectful yet unbowed. Ethan mimicked her movement, though far less gracefully. A hush fell over the hall, broken only by the soft rustle of robes as the assembled Valtura leaned in, eager to witness the spectacle. The regal figure in the central chair, presumably the head counselor, spoke in a resonant, imposing tone. "Zyra, daughter of the Lemiris line, you have forsaken your duties as heir and fled our domain. Now you return with a human bound to your essence. We must understand your motives before passing judgment." Zyra took a steadying breath. Through the bond, Ethan felt her gathering courage. "I do not deny fleeing," she said, "but the soul bond was formed out of necessity. A human, Ethan Carter, beheld my true form. Our law allows only two choices, his death or a bond. I chose to spare his life." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Some nodded in grim approval. Death was a harsh penalty, but it was their custom. Others glowered, seeing in Zyra's actions a violation of tradition. The head counselor's gaze flicked to Ethan. "Step forward, human," she commanded. "Speak your name clearly." He swallowed hard, stepping up beside Zyra. "My name is Ethan Carter," he said, voice trembling despite his best efforts to appear composed. "You are now bound to the princess of the Lemiris line," said the head counselor, her tone heavy with centuries of authority. "Are you aware of what this entails?" "Yes," Ethan answered, trying to stand tall. "At least, as much as Zyra has explained. I did it to save my life, but not only that. I did it because I believe she's worth sacrificing for, if it comes to that. Zyra's gaze darted to him, surprise and gratitude shining in her glowing eyes. Ethan felt a wave of warmth through their bond. For a moment, the tension of the hall seemed to recede. The head counselor regarded him with a measured stare. Bravery is admirable, but our ways are complex. To stand by Zyra's side is to inherit her obligations and her enemies. I understand, Ethan said, though in truth, he probably didn't. Another council member, a stern-looking male with deep indigo skin, spoke. Princess Zyra, you were betrothed to Lord Ares of the Crescent Nebula. That alliance was crucial to maintaining balance among neighboring star systems. By bonding with a human, you jeopardized that treaty. How do you answer for this dereliction? Zyra's shoulders tensed. I never agreed to that betrothal, she insisted, voice tight. It was arranged without my consent. I left because I could not live with a forced marriage, nor could I bear being a pawn in political schemes. I wanted freedom. A dozen voices erupted at once, some scolding her for insolence, others showing sympathy. The head counselor raised a hand, and silence fell. We have heard your reasons, but we must judge the validity of this bond. If it truly was the only way to preserve our secrecy, the council may accept it. However, we must ensure that this human is capable of upholding Voltran standards, should he be recognized as consort. We will test him. She turned her gaze on Ethan. Over the next moon cycle, you shall remain in our domain, learning our customs, language, and ways. Scholars, the region of culture, and this council will scrutinize you. Only if you pass these trials shall we legitimize your bond and accept you into our society. Ethan swallowed, feeling dread and determination. He had never felt so out of his depth, yet the alternative was unthinkable. He nodded slowly. I understand, he said. The head counselor inclined her head. Then let it be done. You shall reside in the palace wing reserved for guests of royal standing, under guard. You may move freely within designated boundaries. A tutor will guide you, and at the end of this trial, we will convene again to deliver our verdict. With that, the council adjourned. Guards and courtiers ushered Ethan and Zyra through winding corridors of glass-like walls and vaulted ceilings. The architecture was breathtaking, each chamber and hallway illuminated by ambient light that seemed to emanate from the air itself. Through windows, Ethan glimpsed a city of crystalline spires suspended over lavender clouds, the hum of advanced machinery thrumming beneath the floors. Finally, they arrived at a suite of rooms that felt opulent and otherworldly. The attendant bowed. Here you will stay, Princess Zyra and Mr. Carter. A tutor will arrive in the morning. With that, the attendant departed, and Ethan was left marveling at the sleek, alien design, floating orbs of soft light, furniture that contoured to the body, windows offering a sweeping view of the star-studded sky. Zyra closed the door, her face etched with worry. Well, Ethan said with a forced laugh, I guess we're not in Redwood Summit anymore. She managed a small chuckle. No, we are far, far from Earth. But we'll get through this, together. He nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Together, he echoed. They talked late into the night, sharing hopes and fears, confiding in each other as they tried to process their new reality. The next day, Ethan's education began in earnest. A Voltran scholar named Seraphix taught him etiquette and language, fluid greetings, taboo phrases, and the swirling scripts of Voltran writing. Afternoons brought cultural immersion, and evenings saw grueling physical drills under Kazir, who tested Ethan's adaptability and resilience. Voltran onlookers sometimes observed, whispering among themselves. Some were intrigued by the human who dared to bond with a princess. Others believed him unfit. Through it all, Ethan and Zyra found moments of quiet companionship, exploring hidden balconies overlooking the city, or strolling in floating gardens of bioluminescent flowers. As the days passed, they grew closer, their bond evolving from desperate necessity into a source of genuine affection. Yet tensions simmered. Rumors spoke of Lord Ares pushing to dissolve the Union, citing the precarious alliance with the Crescent Nebula. One night, a guard informed them of an emergency council session convened by Ares' faction. Fearing the worst, Ethan and Zyra raced to the chamber, arriving to find Ares in furious debate with the head counselor. The bond was formed under duress. Ares thundered. He faced death. That is coercion, not free will. This sets a dangerous precedent that undermines our traditions. Princess Zyra must fulfill her duty. A wave of protest rolled through the assembly. Zyra lifted her chin, defending their choice. Ethan, too, insisted he had agreed willingly. But Ares demanded the rite of severance, an ancient, perilous ritual that could forcibly unbind two souls if the council deemed their bond invalid. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The head counselor grew pale. That rite has not been used in centuries, she cautioned. It could endanger their minds, possibly their lives. Ares stood firm, claiming duty and tradition demanded it. The council, unable to dismiss a formal request, set a hearing for 3 days later. Anxiety weighed on Ethan and Zyra like a crushing tide. If the council found any reason to doubt the legitimacy of their bond, the rite might be invoked, tearing them apart. For 3 days, they rallied allies. Seraphix and Khazir vouched for Ethan's sincerity and progress. Others spoke of witnessing true affection between the princess and the human. Yet Ares's supporters clamored for the rite. On the morning of the hearing, the grand hall was filled to capacity. The head counselor, presiding from the crystal seat, called the proceedings to order. Zyra spoke first, explaining how, while the bond began under dire circumstances, it had grown into a genuine and mutual commitment. Ethan added his voice, struggling to speak basic Voltaren to prove his dedication. The crowd stirred with cautious approval, though Lord Ares sneered, insisting that fear of death was coercion, not free will. The head counselor then invoked an ancient artifact, the Eye of Viara, a crystalline orb that could peer into the essence of souls. If Ethan and Zyra agreed to stand before it, the council would see the truth of their bond. They consented. Ares, though wary, did the same. When the attendants unveiled the orb, it pulsed with rainbow light. Ethan felt it sifting through his mind, and the bond flared, revealing memories of their first encounter, the terror and tenderness, their growing love. Zyra's recollections overlapped with his, her regret at fleeing responsibility, her relief and fascination upon meeting him, her blossoming hope. The eye displayed these visions to the assembled Valtyra as swirling images in the crystal. Awestruck silence filled the chamber. The head counselor spoke, voice reverent. The Eye of Viara shows that fear may have sparked this bond, but it is now sustained by genuine devotion. The council recognizes it as authentic. Ethan felt tears of relief. Zyra sagged against him, the tension draining from her. Yet Lord Ares erupted in a burst of rage, forming a blade of violet energy and lunging at the orb, intent on destroying it. Khazir and Seraphix acted swiftly, containing his blade with protective wards. Guards seized Ares, dragging him away as he spat curses, warning that the Crescent Nebula would never accept this. The head counselor, face stern, declared Ares's petitions void. She recognized the bond and warned that any who threatened it would face the council's wrath. Applause thundered through the hall, and many rushed forward to celebrate the unprecedented victory. Ethan and Zyra clung to each other, hearts soaring. They were accepted, together. In the days that followed, negotiations began to repair the rupture with the Crescent Nebula, but the council's stance stood firm. Zyra and Ethan's bond would be honored. Eventually, they were told they could return to Earth if they wished. The council hoped their union might begin a new era of dialogue between Valtyra and humanity. The head counselor even met with them privately, offering gentle words of hope. Then came the moment to go home. A portal shimmered, and in a swirl of starlight, they stepped onto Redwood Summit's familiar soil. The crisp mountain air greeted them like an old friend, and the portal closed behind them, cutting off the distant glow of the alien sky. Zyra and Ethan stood outside the hidden hot spring where their paths had first crossed. For a moment, they merely breathed, relieved, triumphant, and bound by a love that transcended worlds. A month later, Redwood Summit buzzed with a quiet anticipation. Officially, it was a private, high-society engagement ceremony at an exclusive venue, but few suspected that half the guests were from another star system. Voltaren delegates arrived discreetly, cloaked in human semblance. Gifts of crystalline art and advanced technology were exchanged. Ethan wore a tailored suit with subtle star script embroidery, while Zyra's gown fused Earth style with alien grace, her violet skin proudly visible. Beneath towering cedar trees, They recited vows that blended Earth and Voltran customs. They exchanged rings and linked auras with a delicate crystalline pendant, a physical manifestation of their soul bond. Warmth pulsed around them, causing more than a few onlookers to blink back tears of awe. Music floated through the air, soft strings from earthly violins, haunting Voltran chanting. Dinner showcased both Earth and alien cuisines, laughter bridging species as new friendships formed. For one enchanted evening, Redwood Summit became a gateway between distant worlds. As the celebration drew to a close, Ethan and Zyra slipped away to the hot spring where it all began. The moonlight cast silver beams across the water, steam curling into the cool night sky. Hand in hand, they sank into the warmth, memories swirling around them like the mist. They recalled the terror of alien laws, the thrill of interstellar trials, and the unbreakable bond that had grown from a single, fateful encounter. "Hard to believe it's been only a few months," Ethan murmured, sliding closer. "It feels like a lifetime." Zyra smiled, pressing her forehead to his. "In some ways, it was a lifetime, a life we left behind for something new." He wrapped an arm around her, contentment radiating from both their souls. "Where do we go from here?" She let out a gentle laugh, the sound like faint wind chimes in a hidden glade. "We build a bridge between worlds," she said. "We show Valtyra that Earth has much to offer, and we show Earth that Valtyra is not some distant threat. And in the meantime, we create a life, together." Ethan leaned in, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. The bond shimmered between them, a testament to the path they had walked and the vast journey yet to come. When at last they pulled apart, both were smiling, hearts glowing with possibilities. "Together," Ethan echoed softly. And so, under the serene watch of Redwood Summit's moonlit sky, they sealed their pledge once more, bound by more than cosmic law or desperate chance. They were bound by love, a connection strong enough to unite two hearts from distant galaxies. In the months and years ahead, they would face both earthly and celestial challenges, but with hands clasped and souls entwined, they would forge their path, one that promised a future as warm, luminous, and unbreakable as the sacred springs where. Either story began,